Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Happy Friday. Glad you could make it. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight, we are going to talk about Satandom and the devil's blasphemy laws. Now, I expect you have a pretty good idea where I'm going with some of this, so as not to waste any time on stuff that we've already gone over. If you want to quibble with what I'm saying with regards to free speech, please go and watch one of the two dark streams that I previously did on free speech. I did at least one. I think I did two. Perhaps one of the moderators or somebody can look up exactly which number it was and put that here in the chat. But the point is that free speech is an Enlightenment propaganda piece. There is no such thing as free speech. If you think the matter through, you'll realize that there has never been such a thing as free speech, that there have always been limitations on free speech and freedom of expression. Always. Not just the whole fire in a theater, but if we had genuinely free speech, then libel and defamation, fraud, all of these things would be permitted and legal, but they're not. So that means, by definition, we do not have free speech. You are not allowed to lie under oath. You are not allowed to perjure yourself. The press is not allowed to publish information that is barred by national security. So there is no such thing as freedom of speech or freedom of expression. The only freedom of this sort that actually exists is that which is merely a truism that was expressed by Martin Luther. Die Gedanken sind frei. He says thoughts are free. Thoughts are free. We do have freedom of thought, but that's not a legal right. That is merely a recognition of the actual state of things. You have absolutely no ability to control anything that I'm thinking. You don't even have the ability to know what I'm thinking. That's what gives me freedom of thought. I think there's something wrong. And there are no consequences for bad thought. There is no way for anyone to measure it, to judge it, etc., etc. You know, they can put up the lights and have no idea. Remember, this was a hot topic back when Sam Harris was doing his experiment with regards to belief. And remember, that experiment failed. He thought that by measuring brainwaves, it would be possible to distinguish between the type of belief required for religious thought and the type of belief required for other forms of knowledge. And so it failed. There's no difference, no perceptible difference. And so I don't believe that there will ever be any ability to actually read and interpret thoughts. I don't believe that they exist on the material plane. You know, the idea that you're going to be able to read thoughts, read specific thoughts, means that thoughts have to be material. They have to exist in some form of wave or particle. And there's absolutely no indication that that is true. There's been a lot of experiments. There's a lot of rich people trying to figure out how to upload their minds to the cloud, but it doesn't, it's not going to work. It doesn't work. And with all due respect for the possibility that technology improves and expands in ways that we cannot imagine, I think we're dealing with a category error here. I think that we're trying to materialize the immaterial. And so when you look at, yes, you can interpret thoughts through their interaction with people. But what's interesting to me is the way that, because we can see the consequences of thoughts, we assume, or at least scientists assume, that thoughts are therefore material. But even though we can see the consequences of God's actions, many people refuse to admit that God exists. And so they have to, if you were to apply logic, the same opinion on existence or not should be applied to both. Now, obviously, there are some people who would argue that thoughts don't exist and that it has something to do with momentary flashes of material configurations of chemicals and hormones and so forth. But it's not, I don't agree with that, and there's no evidence for that yet. That's why scientists who are working on this stuff talk about the problem of consciousness and the problem of cognition. Gladatus points out we can observe what happens to our thoughts when we shut down some area of the brain. That's true. That's true. But just because they can be affected doesn't mean that they are material. Because again, we're talking about an intersection of two different planes of reality, the material and the immaterial. Potentially. Now, I could be wrong. It's possible, certainly. Place, including where there aren't any people. Imagine what that would do to the scientific perception of reality. So, Seth Smith says, Vox, do you think that immaterial in this realm is material in another? Yes. I think that what I'm talking about and what the frankly fairly conventional Christian perspective is very much in line with what we've been learning about quantum mechanics. So, but we'll see. But we'll see. No, Cortisol Bear, you're incorrect. He says, we already know people can read thoughts. That's what poker is about. No, it's not. In thinking, we're actually engaging in the quantum verse. What does it mean then that no speech is free? It means what we've already seen. It means we've already seen that someone will set the rules. We used to live in, at least those of us in the West, used to live in a world called Christendom. And that was the world that was dominated by the Catholic Church and by the Orthodox Church. And the laws were very different. In fact, a town in Italy just very recently passed new blasphemy laws. You're not allowed to take the name of you're not allowed to take the name of the divinity in vain, and it's being punished by a fairly steep fine. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Why? because look at what has replaced the speech laws of Christendom. We don't have freedom of speech now. We have less freedom of speech than before the freedom of speech advocates successfully launched their campaign to overturn those blasphemy laws. Now what we have are blasphemy laws that are called hate speech laws. And so you're not allowed to question certain historical events. You're not allowed to criticize certain people. You're not allowed to communicate scientific. You're not allowed to communicate scientific backed theories. You're not allowed to cite evidence that supports those hypotheses. All of these things are blasphemy laws, because what you're doing is you're blaspheming against the sacred principles of tolerance, equality, progress, inclusivity, and diversity, or tepid, as I use as a, I don't know how to pronounce it, mnemonic. Zach McCracken is right. The EU now applies blasphemy laws against insulting Muslims. They apply it against insulting Jews, but they do not apply it against insulting Christians. Why not? Because these are Satan's laws, and they're being established by Satan's servants. They're being established by people who worship Satan. And that's why the correct term for the legal and cultural system in which we find ourselves now is Satandom. Because that's what it is. It is being run by the people. It is being pushed by the people who, of whom it was said, they serve their father, the devil, and they are creatures of the lie. It's absolutely true. You can not only prove it by looking at the individuals involved, but you can also see it. You can also discern it logically from the consequences and the actions. You know, we understand that "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." The Aleister Crowley formula is satanic. But what a lot of people don't realize, and I read a good piece today, it was talking about libertarianism. Libertarianism is fundamentally Satanism, especially of the Randian objectivist style. Objectivism is openly and completely anti-Christian. Rand demanded that all objectivists had to be atheists. She actually broke with Murray Rothbard because he wouldn't give up his Catholic wife. And so when you see these things, you can't unsee them anymore. It's an established fact, and people are learning that. Binks Webelf is correct. So supporting free speech ends up delegitimizing Christianity, truth, goodness, beauty, and morality. Absolutely. Ayn Rand shouldn't have been flogged. She should have been sent back to the Soviet Union, where she belonged. She wasn't an American. She wasn't a Christian. She didn't belong here. She did hate C.S. Lewis, and she hated him because he was a Christian. Gautama Buddha is correct, possibly not in the way that he intends, but he says the devil always plays both sides. That's true. And so do his servants. That's why they say on the one side they're communists, and on the other side they say they're conservatives. Anyone who inverts and subverts and redefines is a creature of Satan. You know, that's what they are. And that, you know, and this is, by the way, if you notice, Owen gets attacked a lot for being anti-Semitic. He's not, but he gets attacked for it because he criticizes a specific group of people. Have you ever noticed that I very seldom get attacked that way? Almost never. There's a good reason for that, because I'm not even remotely anti-Semitic. But I am absolutely 100% anti-satanic. And I am more than happy to discuss with any individual who tries to claim that all Jews are Satanists, because I know that's not true. But they also really don't want to get into a discussion of what God it is they actually worship. It's not an accident that all of those anti-Christian actions, whether it comes from rewriting the Christmas carols to make them about snow and winter and family and silver bells and shopping in the city, instead of singing the praise of Jesus Christ and celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. It's not an accident. If you look, the people who wrote those songs were invariably non-Christian and usually anti-Christian. And it keeps growing, because that's where you have the war on Christmas now. Trying to turn Merry Christmas, just merely wishing someone a Merry Christmas, suddenly becomes hate speech. When you're dealing with that, you're dealing with the servants of the devil. Let's see here. How to extinguish Satan's stranglehold over the world. You can't. It's his territory. He's the God of this world. He's the prince of this world, the prince of the powers of the air. He holds it illegitimately, but he's holding title on it. And the only way that you can avoid serving him is by accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior, because that is the only power that is capable of resisting him. How do you know it's true? I just ask you this. Why on earth do the powers of this world hate the name of Jesus Christ so much? They don't hate the name of the Buddha. You can talk about Siddhartha all you want. They don't care. They don't care if you talk about Muhammad. They don't mind if you talk about Moses. But boy, do they hate the name of Jesus Christ. Welcome, Steve. And so when you look at this, and Smart Alec quotes Ephesians, "Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." In other words, if you don't, you won't be able to. And this is why it's so important to pursue personal holiness, why it's so important to pursue personal integrity, to resist temptation, to repent of your sins. And I am not pretending to not have fallen into all of those things. I'm not pretending to be, any better at behaving than anybody else. But the key is to keep fighting, to keep moving forward, and to keep turning over your weaknesses and asking for help from God, because he will provide it. It doesn't matter what your weakness is. It doesn't matter if your temptations are sexual or chemical, or you're inclined to dishonesty, you're inclined to sloth, to gluttony, whatever it is. The more that you take it on directly, and the more that you ask for help, the more successfully you'll be able to do that. And this is why Owen loves that song by Max Romeo, Chase the Devil. You may not realize that that song is essentially taken out of Ephesians chapter 6, where he talks about putting on the whole armor of God. He says he's going to put on his iron shirt. That's what that's what Max Romeo is talking about. And somebody said that Jesse Lee Peterson talks about this a lot. And this is not something that you need to be a great intellect to understand, accept, and apply. The truth is the truth. And we are all, anyone who's got a normally functioning mind is capable of understanding and applying it. In fact, the more intelligent you are, the easier it is to try to rationalize yourself around it. To try to manufacture some plausible reason that you don't need to obey God's rules, that you don't need to swallow your pride, that you don't need to submit, that you don't need to avoid giving into temptation, that you can just do whatever you want. I mean, that's exactly what the Talmud is. It's a big collection of people, smart people, very smart people, coming up with ways to excuse doing what you want. Submitted to Christ says, this is my only issue with Jesse. He says he is saved and perfect now, never ever sins anymore. Hey, if that's true, good for him. You never know. Maybe he's right. But it's I'm not that way. I'm pretty sure Owen would say the same. Speaking of Jesse Lee Peterson, Descentus Crush says, Jesse had a woman on who would not agree to God's plan, greater good, and he exposed the satanic God that spiritual, not Christian people play. It was fantastic. Yes, they do. They absolutely do. Didn't Aristotle say that a lot of people use their philosophy in order to justify their actions? Yes, I think he called them sophists, if I recall correctly. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about sophists, whether you're talking about Gnostics, it's all the same thing. I'll talk about this more for the members who join for the book review soon. But Stevenson's latest novel is pure Gnosticism. It's techno-Gnosticism. Because the Satan figure is the actual creator, and the stand-in for the creator God, who doesn't create everything, but does to a certain extent create Adam and Eve, is the actual devil, is the evil figure. And it's just classic Gnostic inversion. And again, note that this has nothing to do with any specific group of people. The Gnostics were not Jewish. The Cathars, who were much more evil than just about any other people that we've come across, except for possibly the historical Aztecs, they weren't Jewish. So it's all about something bigger than humanity. It's all about something that has a time frame that exceeds not just human lives, but exceeds generations. And we see that evidence everywhere. Bruce Charlton, the English academic and philosopher, he's written very well on it. He's like a lot of very smart guys. He's a bit, let's say, theologically creative. So I'm not recommending his theological perspective across the board, but as he points out, what we see and what we see evidence of is very clear that there's something going on well beyond the normal human. In fact, he has you can look this one up. I'll put the link in. It's evidence of long-term demonic infiltration of conservative evangelical leadership in the Church of England and the British establishment. And he's talking about how he says, we need to understand why someone might spend his entire life apparently working against something that is such a powerful motivator in his own life. He's talking about fake Christian leaders. Why he specifically chose such a hostile environment for the practice of his own very unusual and specific sin. So he's talking about the infiltration of the church leaderships. What we are looking at is the question of what causes people to live and work for decades and across generations against their own purported interests. And he says, the chilling conclusion is that even long-term, even lifetime, personal self-sacrifice is not evidence of sincerity. Behavior and speech are not sufficient evidence. To discern a man's ultimate allegiance, whether to God or Satan, we need to be able to know, to intuit the motivation of that man's heart, which of course we have no ability to do. But it's a very important perspective, because I think that you see this, and you can see that humanity is capable of not just deceiving others, but being deceived or being part of a deception for their entire lives. So, Appalachian Bear says, blasphemous is going against God. Blasphemous is going against NASA. That's a good one. I like it. Here's the link, by the way, to that Bruce Charlton piece. And I will hear nothing against Taco Bell. I realize that it's probably not even natural, but I don't care. Alicia says, regardless of the sinner's desire to hide their sin, that sin has a far greater desire to destroy its host. This is true. Brandon O'Neill says, almost finished with Mere Christianity. Started going back to church 2 months ago. Thanks, Fox, for showing me the way. It's good news. Gautama, you are clearly mired in Mara. So, so anyhow, you need to turn to God the Father. You need to turn to Jesus Christ if you want to be able to stand against both the evil of the world and its servitors. And they will hate you for it, but you know what? They're going to hate you anyhow. They will hate you because you stand up for, even if you don't accept Jesus Christ, even if you don't believe in the existence of Jesus Christ, even if you don't believe in the existence of evil, they will hate you because you stand up for the good, the beautiful, and the true. They don't just hate God. They don't just hate Jesus Christ. They hate everyone who serves him. Jesus told us they would. But it goes beyond that. They also hate all the fruits of the Spirit. That's why they want to destroy Western civilization, even if it means no more indoor plumbing for them. I mean, do you think that what they're doing, inviting the invasion of all these masses of pagan barbarians, is because they think that they're going to be able to maintain a high quality first world society? They don't care. They just want to see it destroyed. Here's the thing, and this is what I would say to those of you who are tempted by the lollipops and fancy pants that are on offer. You know, if you just join the dark side, you know, if you just do what thou wilt and accept an occasional order now and then, you know, all the lollipops and fancy pants they give you, well, you know what? They don't give a damn about you. They don't hate you, but they don't fear you. You're just a tool that they will break and throw away without hesitation. And I was kind of laughing. You know, there's all these stories about all these really rich globalists who are buying, you know, places in New Zealand so that when the Pentecost takes place across the West, that they'll have somewhere to run. And I was thinking, you're going to run to New Zealand. And so, you know, what we're already seeing, just look at what's going on with Sabo in Hollywood right now. Look at those signs they've put up with, look at those signs they've put up with regards to, you know, the new Tarantino movie. So, I have no doubt that using that term would trigger them. In fact, I used it intentionally because I wanted to see what would happen. I was pretty sure that that level of rhetoric was going to be considered nuclear level rhetoric. So, welcome, David Michael. So, but again, all we can do is speak the truth. All we can do. No, I'm not going to. I proved my point. And so it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see at what point they're going to suddenly need to act in terms of trying to take down this channel. Kevin Burger King is dubious. Maybe it wasn't. We'll see. We'll see. Let's do some of the super chats now. The Rational Rise says, I'm reading Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose. Where are we here? Okay, I missed a few. Yes. Your Gay says, Vox, I can't change my name for 30 days. No problem. Christopher G asks, who are some of your favorite horror writers? I don't know if he's classically considered a horror writer, but I would say Guy de Maupassant is my favorite. Tanith Lee is my second favorite. I don't think much of the modern horror writers. I've read a little bit of Stephen King. I think he sucks. I've read a little bit of Dean Koontz. Wasn't impressed. Read Brian somebody or other who writes all the vampire stuff, and he's terrible. Marie says, admit Samuel Clemens was the best writer of all time. I will not admit that. Your Gay throws in another $10. And then throws in it for a third time and asks, Am I in the 12-step program with Legionnaire and Dr. Azume yet? I don't know. We've just seen this one time, but I'll let them be the judge of that. What typically happens to a Bravo when no honorable alphas are around? He usually gets elevated to the alpha position, and he usually finds himself in over his head. Okay, I'm reading Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose upon your recommendation, Vox, and it's one of the most wonderful books I've ever read. Cheers. It is. It's one of the best books I've ever read. You know, I would argue that Foucault's Pendulum was actually a better book, but it's not as accessible or likable as The Name of the Rose. Name of the Rose is one of the greatest novels ever written, in my opinion. Nick's Music says, why was Hitler allowed for president after being convicted of high treason and a year before becoming a German citizen? Mathis says he was an agent. Mathis may well be right. I don't know what the German rules were, but I don't know why somebody who isn't a citizen and has been convicted of treason would be permitted to run for office. That doesn't sound like a very law and order German thing to do. Try and Speak asks, do you think there is any significance to Andrew Weissman of Enron fame being involved with Mueller's team? Yes, Mueller is very tied to trying to clean up the mess that was left behind by some convicted pedos, Epstein, Asimov, and who knows how many others. So given that Weissman was from a financial scam organization, there's a good chance that he's involved in the same sort of, whatever you want to call it, the same sort of evil little elite club. Both as, functionaries. They're not, neither one of them is a big fish. They're just servitors. G asks, if the U.S. will break apart into smaller states, will at least one of the smaller states be predominantly white and Catholic? I would assume so. I think you're going to see a bigger distinction between Catholicism and Protestant and Orthodox in the future. Hey Vox, sorry for off topic. Can you point me in the direction of Bill Lynn's columns in between On War and 09 and Olympus and 13? No, I can't actually. I don't know where. I think you might have been with the American Conservative, but I'm not sure. What is the correct version of the Bible to read? Doesn't matter as long as it's not the Schofield Bible or a translation that's been done in the past 20 years. Christopher McCullough, are the elites possessed or merely subservient to them? I think that they are not possessed. I think that they are that they knowingly worship evil spirits. Vox, is there a Mandela effect on Judeo-Peterson's sexuality? He's definitely looking more gay lately. I have no idea. I haven't paid any attention to Peterson in months. The last thing I saw was that video when he talked to Milo. So, fascinating me on Revolt Link. Why is Q so cryptic? Because he wants to make people think, and because they need to engage in a lot of misinformation and disinformation. Think about this. If they had come out, if whatever team is behind Q, and it is a team. In fact, there's even reason to believe that maybe Ivanka Trump is quite a bit different than we've been thinking. If somebody had said that, people had said that Epstein was a known supplier of children to the elite and that sort of, I heard the stories about Epstein and stuff, back before he was arrested in 2006. So all that stuff was supposed to be conspiracy theory. All that stuff was supposed to be, impossible. Now, everybody knows it's true. But people are not, if Q had simply come out and said it, Epstein's doing this, Hillary Clinton is doing that, Disney is, the devil's PR agency, who would have believed it? Nobody would have believed it. But by making these cryptic predictions, giving people hope, allowing people to start digging. I mean, essentially what the Q team did was they weaponized the autists. They managed to take this incredibly formidable human processing computer and use it to learn all kinds of information. And so, and it's not something, the problem that we've faced for probably generations is that it's so easy to subvert people. It's so anytime anybody gets anywhere, they they get offered money, they get threatened, et cetera, et cetera. Well, how do you get around that? You get around it by crowdsourcing. How do you buy off, corrupt, or threaten a 10,000, 30,000 anonymous autistics? You can't. It's totally impossible to control. And so, is Jared Kushner one of the good guys? I wouldn't think so, but he might be. I was astonished by that misspelled Ivanka Trump tweet when she talked about the United Kingston. And then basically pointing everybody to this massive financial scam / child trafficking cult that the media has been trying to ignore. Suddenly you're kind of like, okay, maybe there's a bit more to Ivanka than we thought. And if there's more to Ivanka, then maybe Jared Kushner is one of the good guys. Hard to say. We can't know. Let's see here. Should I write well on internet forums or choose brevity? I would choose brevity. Monica S. What about the mentalists, the magicians? They're all frauds. They claim to be able to read thoughts. They're not. They're doing what they call cold reading. I mean, I'm able to do that very, very easily. I mean, if you're smart enough, you can just, the whole Sherlock Holmes thing, you just read a few clues and you can astound people with what you know about them. What does the Bible say about magicians and psychics? Nothing good. What Bible do you recommend? I'm not into playing that game. I just said avoid the Scofield Bible and avoid recent translations. Vox, big fan, found you through Big Bear. The Neocom Reorthic made me hesitant to listen to you. About 10 minutes in, I realized fully why Peterson and Shapiro discredit you. Of course, because they serve a different master. One of the reasons why I recognize them is the same reason that they recognize me. I know who their master is, and they know who mine is. You know, it's not that difficult. You know, if you're committed to the truth, to detect a liar. And I can tell you that liars hate and fear people who they know tell the truth. You know, they're terrified of people who tell the truth. Do they ever make comments about it? No, they have no interest whatsoever. You know, I mean, to me, that's a positive indicator in and of itself. You know, the moment that I see people lying about somebody, especially people that I know to be liars, and I see them attacking somebody, that makes me want to look at that person a little more closely, because the first question you have to ask yourself is, why are they lying about him? And so it's very easy, you know, and that's one of the things I think it would be helpful for a lot of video content creators to learn, is that it's important not to allow yourself to play into their narrative. If you're watching me, it's impossible to conclude that I am crazy or deranged or hateful or angry, because I'm not. There's literally nothing about the content that I say, the way in which I say it, that is hateful or angry. You know, I recognize that the world belongs to them and to their master. It did before I was born, and it will after I die. We Christians are in the world, we are not of it. And they have no claim on us. They have no, you know, it's interesting to me that people say, oh, well, you know, you have to watch out, you have to be careful, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. Because we don't belong to them. We're not a tool that they have the right to break and cast away at any time. You know, doesn't mean that, you know, the normal travails of the world won't affect you and so forth. But, you know, in my experience and from looking at the lives of, you know, many good Christian men throughout history, you know, we're left alone because they don't think that most people are going to believe us. They don't think that most people are going to pay any attention. They have confidence in their lies, and for good reason, because most people believe them. Think about how many people today, despite all the evidence that's out there, how many people would believe the claim that I am some sort of racial supremacist who hates people? But Ben Shapiro is a good conservative who just wants what's good for America, right? The fact that he's on record advocating, you know, driving the Palestinians out of the, you know, out of the, you know, he's actively supported ethnic cleansing. He's actively supported, you know, war after war after war. He's literally supported setting up a military empire throughout the entire Middle East. And he is a open racial supremacist who brags about the purity of his blood. It's because they're liars. What they do is they invert everything. And that's why when you hear lies about people, when you hear terrible, terrible things about people coming from known liars and known inverters, that's a pretty good indication that that's somebody that you might want to pay some attention to. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we got a little Mandela effect there. Taffy says, it's always Ben Shapiro. What are you talking about? That's true. That's true. Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro couldn't even conserve his last name. That's funny. Jack Union, do you feel fortunate that you were born into the world of Christianity? I wasn't born into the world of Christianity. I was born into Satandom. You know? We are invaders. And that's one of the reasons why we're hated. Let's see here. Poison Squid says, nothing will convince me Trump is good. Just wait. He might surprise you. I hope he does. Abraham Kim says, Jordan talked about his psyche being split some time back. Yeah, I'm not even remotely surprised. Jordanetics probably just aggravated his already split mental state because Vox tells the truth. I doubt it helped. I saw the mainstream media try to give Vox guilt by association with someone, looked that someone up, and Vox dismantled their ideology completely and disagreed with that person. I have a feeling I know who you're talking about. Yeah, but that's what they do. That's why I don't talk to them. Wired was trying to talk to me a few days ago. The BBC, somebody from the BBC contacted me today, just wanted to interview me and get my perspective. It's like, how dumb do you think I am? Twice in now 4 years, I gave the media an opportunity because they swore up and down that it wasn't about me, it wasn't about my beliefs, it was about something specific, product stuff that we were doing, an event that was happening. And both times, the resulting piece ended up being an attempt to discredit me. So I don't talk to them. I have no need to talk to them. If they want to quote me, they can quote what I've said here. Of course, they don't want to do that. They might, at most, try to take a little snippet. But they can't even complain about the rhetoric that I'm using because the very rhetoric that I'm using is so effective and is so infectious that they don't want it mentioned. They don't want the whole pedo wood thing to come out, which is why Sabo's work is so brilliant. He's totally dropping rhetorical nukes all over Tarantino's new film. And they don't want Disney referred to as the devil mouse. Because, again, the best rhetoric, as Aristotle tells us, the best and most effective rhetoric is that which points to the truth. And both of those things, referring to pedowood and referring to the devil mouse, point you closer to the truth. And that's why it's important, and that's why it's effective. Well, the Ebola mouse is funny, but it's a little bit, it's not great rhetoric because there's that one level of abstraction, that one level of thought required to get it. Yeah, 33 Club in Disneyland. Surprise, surprise. It's important not to talk to. One thing I have learned is that it's important not to direct rhetoric that's that devastating at individuals. First of all, it's not necessary. And secondly, that opens you up for charges of libel and slander. You know, some people are saying things about Quentin Tarantino. Can you prove it? If not, then don't say it. Speak the truth. Speak the truth. All right, you're just being stupid. Let's see. So, when you look at this stuff, the more that you see people attempting to deceive you, the more that you see people attempting to redefine things, the more that you see people attempting to invert and subvert, then you know who they serve. The more that you see people attempting to speak the truth, the more that you see them attempting to create the good and the beautiful, the more that you know that they serve Jesus Christ, even if they don't know it yet. And so, on that note, thanks for tuning in. New members, be sure to send me an email with your email address if you want notifications. And we'll look forward to seeing you the next time. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.